Hey, Simon here. So this is my weekly roundup of news and topics from Japan from the last week, hopefully within 5 minutes. Hopefully I can do it this week, but we will see. This is from my regular Tokyo Tonight show, 11 p.m. Japan time every Sunday night, but of course you can watch the recorded show, which will go up this week. There was a skip last week. We had technical problems last week. Every Monday during the day sometime, of some roundup of all the most interesting news and topics from Japan the last week, and all my recommended reading, which you can find in my Flipboard magazines, all of which are under the link below, but the specific video topics from this one are in my video topics Flipboard. And let's get into it. So tonight, just today, and we're still finding out the details about this, and we'll probably find out more about this in the coming days. Indeed, there's been an immolation. A guy set himself on fire, sitting above a walkway that connects the Shinjuku Station South exit with the Shinjuku South Station South terrace. He somehow climbed up on top and he managed to pour petrol on himself and set himself on fire. It initially was broadcast as a suicide. It certainly looked like an attempted suicide. However, he was surrounded by firemen at the time with high-pressure hoses. As soon as he set himself on fire, there's a video I've seen going around which shows the power of the hose pushing him off the perch that he was sitting on up the top there that you can see, and rolling around and basically getting thoroughly doused and carried away, apparently lucid, walking anyway. Apparently he was protesting at length before that against the Abe government and specifically against the current bid to reinterpret the constitution to allow collective defense. Abe seems to have the desire to reinterpret the constitution to allow Japan to participate in the next version of the Afghan war or the Gulf War or whatever. And this goes back a long time. This has been an agenda of his for a long time, but rather than do it by reinterpreting but by amending the constitution by the procedure allowed by the law, instead the cabinet's trying to take a kind of a behind closed doors decision on it without consulting the public, which I'm all for amending the constitution actually if people go along with it, but something like this, fundamental like this, without people's permission isn't very cool, and obviously this guy thought the same thing, although setting himself on fire wasn't cool. Interesting, it hasn't been covered in the NHK news today. Might be because of a policy about not covering attempted suicides or protests or whatever, but this was kind of a big deal, and I think we're going to see more of it in international news and local news, and it might influence the debate, so it'll be interesting to track and follow. Next story, Monocle magazine apparently this week ranked Tokyo the number 2 city to live in the world, I believe. Let's check this out. I believe it was so number 1 Copenhagen, 2 Tokyo, and if you're looking down the list, number 9, Kyoto, Fukuoka, number 10. Fukuoka is considered by many in Japan to be the most livable city in Japan. So yeah, they took a survey of places that are most livable, and check it out. Tokyo, which I love it here. I also grew up near Melbourne, and Melbourne is a great city as well, but it's not as crazy expensive compared to places like Melbourne anymore. And it's a great place to live, so great to see some recognition there. A bunch of new features coming to YouTube. This is from the YouTube Creators blog. Good to see. Apparently, the YouTube Creator Studio is going to be available. Well, that's right. They're going to launch an app which will allow creators to do more like management features. Apparently, which I can't wait for because I hate having to do everything. Go back to my PC every time. New sound effects and expanded audio library that you can use. They're already rolled out the 60 frames per second feature. Fan funding. People use a lot of fan funding for their blogs already on different sites, and they're going to bake that into YouTube, which will be great. Creator credits for collaboration videos, and this will be great for Victor and I, having to switch each week, that there'll be more tools to allow us to recognize multiple collaboration, something I've been campaigning for years, by the way. Improved subtitles, fan subbing, and all that sort of stuff, so awesome stuff coming up. A great article on Nippon.com this week, which I really liked, of culture shock and shokunin culture. And I think understanding shokunin, which is the apprentice and the master relationship culture, it's a major part of understanding most aspects of Japanese culture in my experience, and very good to see an in-depth discussion of that, and I recommend that. Also a great description here, a summary of the Japanese advertising industry in a nutshell. It was a great article. I don't have a lot of time to go through it here today. I do recommend reading it. The one thing it perhaps doesn't quite... this is from James Hollow, by the way, and it was a very well-written blog. Perhaps what it didn't quite go into enough, although it goes into the whole model around this in detail, but the main thing is what you can see on your screen there. Dentsu, which is basically the single advertising company, they're like a monopoly in Japan. And they're more than even a monopoly. They're borderline mob. You don't mess with Dentsu. If you want to be successful, you could sell anything through them, and you could fail with the best product in the world without them. as always, the population being a big topic in Japan all through the news, and it's really interesting to see how it's really coming to dominate the news now, that the population is declining and things, including the whole reinterpretation of the constitution thing, is all being done by old people and so on. So yeah, the harassment of a woman talking about supporting women going on maternity leave last week. In Osaka, the local assembly, a woman who actually was pregnant came back, apparently was harassed by other politicians for taking maternity leave, being inconsiderate with the timing, being absent or whatever. And now there's talk, for example, of having Abe's talking about funding, arranged marriages for people to try to boost the birth rate and stuff like that. So just crazy stuff. Just some other topics as well. There's one which is the Gaijin complex, which was the topic which Victor and Anthony Joe talked about. It was a big talking point on Gaijin Pot last week. So go and check that out. Great to have him on the show, and I wanted to talk about him with it. But indeed, it's the idea that, when Japanese, they have this funny thing where they look at foreigners, particularly white foreigners, as being different. It's not. People presume it's racism sometimes when they first encounter it, and it is in a way, but it's a kind of positive racism, and people don't fully appreciate that. Triggered a lot of comments on the blog last week. And I wish I could have joined in the conversation with Anthony Joe about it, but I couldn't, so I'm sorry about that. But please go and read the article, because it's a really interesting blog. More talk about the Tokyo population falling. Great article also on Nippon.com, which, by the way, is a fantastic site, and I really recommend reading it. There's Peter Durfee is I think the chief editor of it, but talking about the habit of the Japanese media for going in media. Well, basically, the police work with the media to pressure suspects without evidence. Instead, it's lazy police work. Instead of going and actually doing police work and finding out who did something, they make a bunch of hearsay and rumor about a guy that they want to pin it on, and they allow the public pressure, which the media cooperates with and provides. They pile it onto the suspect to get them to confess. The case in this case is the first Aom Shinjuku did a test gassing before they did the subway back in 1995, I think that was. In 1994, the practice that they did was in Matsumoto, which is in Nagano Prefecture, where they drove through a town, spraying the town with sarin gas, and they killed 4 people and injured hundreds. And the first guy to report it was arrested, and for a long time was the accused. And all the newspapers and media and the police totally blamed the guy who lost his wife in the attack and himself became ill. They thought it was him who did it. And great look at how the press basically just ganged up. The way that always happens. It becomes a festival of just beating up a single guy and blaming him. So a great way of looking at the sinister side of how the Japanese crime media works. And this is something I'd like to talk about with Jack Adelstein one day if we get him on. And the final story which just came up tonight is that apparently the beaches in Zushi, which is south of Tokyo, lovely beaches, some of the best beaches close to Tokyo, have introduced a ban on alcohol, loud music, and tattoos. That doesn't mention in the title tattoos, but tattoos are what everyone was talking about. They've talked about there being the Municipal Assembly in March basically is ruling against unruly behavior at the beach, which has turned the area into a nightclub. I don't know. The thing is, Japan isn't unrulier than it used to be in the 60s and 70s when it was kind of more crazy. It's these people from the 60s and 70s, they're getting old and they're going and they're legislating against their young people being able to do anything. And kind of crazy, and you can see here, I'll just enlarge this so you can see, it also bars anyone with visible tattoos from the beach, and this is a public beach. So kind of crazy. It's one of the best beaches in Tokyo, and if you got visible tattoos, you could get sent away. So lots of interesting stuff this week. That is all that I'm covering, and again, that took longer than I planned to, but what can you do? It's been an interesting week of news, and we'll find out more about the Immolation thing and check that out later, so peace.